Hello everybody and welcome. It's the Disco King here to issue an important PSA. On today's issue of Booker Content, we are covering the most boring book that I have ever read. So, if you are going to read this book to follow along with the booker, I need to make sure that you have protection. If this book is going to turn you into a coma patient, then you have to make sure you have somebody on standby to help wake you up. Now, of course, there are many ways to help you stay awake while reading a book. Some people drink coffee, some stick needles into their eyes, but with a book like this, a book this strong and this tedious and this shit, I've decided to go with smelling salts. Now again, you'd use something like this if you were to read more than 100 pages of this book and you started to sort of feel that stupor come on. You'd hit the smelling salts in the same way that gym bunnies do before they sort of hit a mad rep. Now, how does this work? Add 1 spoonful of water using included spoon. I'm keeping my face away just in case I get fucked. Close lid tightly, shake well, uncap, sniff, perform. Okay, very good. Oh god, oh fuck. I did that fucking perfectly. Now, of course, the Booker judges had to say that this book was good, so I wonder if they used this method. It's something that I'd recommend. Alright, so for those of you who are reading this Strange Eventful History at home, what you do is you give them a sniff, just like so. Oh! Fuck! Oh! Oh my god! Oh, this book sucks. It sucks balls. I'm so vibed. I genuinely can't fathom how the people that liked Held and the people that like this can just stomach 200 or more pages of platitudes and be like, yummy, yes, more please. Sure, something like Headshot or Stoneyard Devotional, they're repetitive, but at least the author is trying to convey something that feels even vaguely unique. At least they're committed to something. And these books, these fucking Booker books suck. They're so boring. Right, anyway, the Strange Eventful History is about people who do nothing. Oh, wow. I've never read a book, truly, I've never read a book that is smug by the first paragraph. And when I read that first paragraph, I went, wow, that's incredible how an author could be that fucking annoying immediately. I'm a writer. I tell stories. Of course, really, I want to save lives. Or simply, I want to save life. Oh, I'm a writer. I save the world. I save life. Oh God, I'm so important. Please give me funding. Though I told her I was a writer, she insisted that I was a healer. I had always willed it to be true. It's so impressive how much I can dislike a viewpoint, like, within the prologue. I could not recover while reading this book from how fucking smug the author was while they wrote it and how self-inflated and self-important they were. And there's no importance in this story just from the act of writing it. And I know that's the philosophy of the Stone Diaries, but with this book, it's not interesting. None of it is interesting. It's clearly interesting to the author, but to us, I was fucking bored to tears. That pretentious opening is not merited by the rest of the book because there's no weight to it. I mean, there's weight to the book itself. It's a fucking heavy hardback. It's so long, but there's no weight to the material in it. All the characters are boring and utterly interchangeable. Gaston just loves Lucienne, and that's his character. She was, or he had made her, the source for him of meaning. The for him in that sentence is unnecessary. You don't need the for him there. She was, or he had made her, the source of meaning. What the fuck? Why is the for him there? There's so much bad writing in here like that. That's like borderline tautologist. And that whole sentence smacks like the author has thought up some powerful new emotion that she's conveying, which is the case with the whole book. The promise of eros beneath the careful layers of cretonne and silk. And this is a phrase being thought of by like a government minister? Come off it. I can't say I've ever looked at my girlfriend and said, you promise eros to me, you do it. And I completely disagree with Yi Yun Lee's statement that you live this book through the characters. The characters were always at arm's length or so broad and so boring that I could not give a fuck or could not even bother to empathize or inhabit them. The only time they are, I would say, properly inhabited is in moments where they are talking about something specific or something specifically unique, which is a lot of this book. But the fact that every part of the book does that means that I can't then say, oh, the characters were so deep because of that. Like, they're not deep characters. Every section in this book is sort of a stiff, still life image, and Again, the author thinks that that's genius. She thinks that that's the smartest fucking shit ever written in a book. Like, oh my god, I'm gonna write a history book, but I'm gonna put none of the interesting stuff in it. And she's clearly using the same philosophy as Carol Shields, like, these characters are made important in the rendering of them, but that's not true, because The Stone Diaries is great, because Carol Shields is great, and this book is boring because your characters are boring, your family is boring, fuck off. In any section of the book, I felt like I was lagging behind with the amount of character names and the amount of reference to, like, specific detail, but I never was. There's nothing happening in this book. It's extremely simple. The way you can tell this book is bad is you hit the 70-page mark as I did, and you go, what's the hook to any of this? What's the point of me even reading it? With This Other Eden, which is a book I was thinking of a lot while reading this, there is that spectacular opening that is, like, immersive and wild and extreme, and then immediately after that we get hit with the structure of the book and it flows around. You're invested, you're in it. With this book, it just fucking launches you into this massive inundation of names and places and bullshit and boring characters, and you're meant to care just because the author insists that you should? This Other Eden gives you a show, it's mystical, and this book never gives you a show, it's relentless. There are moments in the book where the author is trying to be showy with the language, but they are so clearly orchestrated as moments for the author to be showy and not to convey something organically that I started to cringe. There are moments in the book where the author would write a super long sentence or try to write a paragraph that's all in one sentence. Now, if you remember from my Austerlitz video, I said something to the effect of, apparently there's a sentence in this book that goes for 9 pages, and I didn't notice because the flow is so beautiful and so uninterrupted. In this book, the author is so desperate for people to think that she's smart that she will interrupt her plodding sentence-to-sentence flow with these really, really fucking long sentences and fucking force you to notice that she's doing that, which is not necessarily what I want. It's embarrassing and smug and pathetic. This author is on her hands and knees, begging me to find her stylish. It is disgusting. It's the equivalent of a cinematographer putting a really, really nice shot in a dog shit movie just so they can add that to their demo reel and get put on future projects. It's so pathetic. If she wrote the same paragraph in 2 sentences instead of 1, I wouldn't be breaking my immersion trying to figure out the fucking progression of clauses in the sentence. This author also used the dash mark like it owed her money. There are other ways to structure a sentence, not that you could tell her that. We shall also do our ritual identification of thesaurus usage. My personal favorite was deracination, which Google was confused about, which means it must be a good word. So yeah, this book generally was trying so hard to be taken seriously and be seen as, I guess, sort of vaguely experimental, that I thought it was pathetic. I'm cooking! Another sniff, please! Oh! Oh, that was worse than the first one. Here's an example of what I'm talking about. This is a long quote, so just be ready. After dinner in her room, the bedroom that she and Francois had shared as kids and had vacated for the tenants, the bedroom that she had left again when Francois reached puberty so that he might sleep alone while she shared with Tata Jeanne, and that she had regained and claimed only the previous August, the week after they returned from seeing him off for America in the Tempest at Le Havre. So that's all one sentence, and it's a very unnecessarily long sentence. But the actual structure of the sentence and what it's saying is that first bit. What was it? After dinner in her room. That's the end of, like, establishment in the sentence. There's no actual action. There's nothing happening in the room. It's after dinner in... You would think it'd be after dinner in her room, she was sleeping. After dinner in her room, she was eating. But it's just after dinner in her room, and then this long dump about information. It's a deliberately misleading sentence, which provokes a number of very specific questions. Those questions are, was this your intention, Claire, to make me reread and be confused by the sentences in your book? And does that fit for a historical fiction about your own family that I already think is smug? And how do I not generally think that you are pretentious as a result of that? Some would say that the premise of the book is clever because we see the moments outside of action, and that gives us time to grow with the characters. I would say, fuck you, this is book 12 of the long list and I am bored. And I think the value of that as an experiment is undone by how try-hard the author is. I'm not willing to give her the credit of a unique idea. Then there was one crucial mistake this book made at about the halfway point, which was to come to me. Sydney, Australia is where this book is set at one point. Sydney, the greatest fucking city in the world. And that's when I realized, holy shit, This book is relying almost entirely on just bullshit that the author googled. Other than a reference in that chapter to Bindi eyes, which is not what we call them Bindies, and also a reference to Gough Whitlam, that entire section could have been set anywhere and it wouldn't matter. It could have been set on the fucking moon, and we wouldn't even need that much more detail to distinguish it from where it is in Sydney. The locations in this book are totally interchangeable and fly past like they're scenes in a fucking third-rate globe-trotting action movie. You people that are like praising the level of detail in this book are absolutely delusional. It's not detail. Here's another example. After Sydney, Australia, it goes back to wherever the fuck, Canada. And one of the characters mentions that their daughter is studying at UTS. Now, UTS is a university here in Sydney. There's also one called UTS. Now, the author could have said the University of Toronto Schools instead of the University of Technology Sydney, which is what I thought it was. But the reason she didn't do that is so that people can Google her acronyms, there's many acronyms in this book, or all of her references and details and go, wow, this author is so smart, she's using so many unique names, she's using so many acronyms, God, she must have done so much research. And fuck you, I see through it. I know I'm using a specific example of something that people know about, but there are other examples of specific cultural lingo that the author is only using to make people go, wow, she's using so many details, she's so smart. But in reality, she's not really getting into her location, she's not really learning more about it, she's just putting names in. At the end, all of a sudden, the book started to pretend to have themes. Whoa, where did they come from? Let's get rid of those. We didn't have those the whole time. Who let those themes in? Do they have a license to be here? A lot of this book is interchangeable in its kind of maudlin approach, and I was never really able to tell locations apart because of the amount of names and terms, and I never gave a fuck about the characters, and I thought the author was try-hard and cringe. This book is not shrewd or complicated enough to be Stoneyard devotional. It doesn't have the wow factor of This Other Eden. What does this book have going for it for 400 pages, other than the author's insistence that her family was important? And the more the book went on, the more I began to detest it for casting its net too wide, and for making me care so little about the characters. The names were a collection of letters for which I felt nothing. Some of the writing is pretty occasionally, that's literally it. I would give my life to ensure that books this smug are not allowed to be published again. It is now time to go lift some weights.